Good afternoon, and we are into Wednesday already, and we're moving along towards the end of February as we are now looking at what this is February 19th, month of February going by, and during the month of January, I read several articles that talked about the continuing rise of dementia that we have and the shock that the data that they thought about the risk of dementia was significantly lower than what's actually turning out to be the facts. So here's a New York Post article from January 14th. Your odds of developing dementia are much higher than previously thought. Prior research suggested that up to 14% of men and 23% of women would get dementia at some point in their lives. However, the actual numbers are 35% for men, that's one of three, and 48% for women after the age of 55. 48% of women, that's half, after the age of 55. The results forecast a dramatic rise in the United States, with 1 or 2 Americans expected to have it. The team that did this research predicted that dementia cases will increase from 500,000 to 1 million every year. It's like, oh my goodness. It's attributed to the aging population, high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, unhealthy diets, sedentary lifestyles, and poor mental health. Poor mental health. You talk about poor mental health. So what does it mean to have poor mental health? So this is something that obviously I've been a part of for the last 30 years as I've studied and worked on the USA Memory Championship and studied the human brain and what we can do to be more proactive and preemptive as best as we can. And I take a little bit more of a different approach to this and saying, what do you mean there's nothing we can do? Now, I admit I'm not a scientist, but I've worked with enough of people over the last 30 years. I've seen a number of people that have come into the USA Memory Championship and demonstrate that they're more to do with their mental functions, cognitive health. If we get more proactive about some things, and the article here suggests maybe there are a few things we can do, but if you step back and think about it, high blood pressure, obesity, unhealthy diets, sedentary lifestyles, and poor mental health are the causes. Well, how about some positive mental health? What are some things that we can do to change our mental health? And when I define cognitive fitness and mental health, I talk about our abilities to input information into our brain and then comprehend it, make use of it. How do we then keep that information and store it so that we can utilize it at some future point in our lives? And then what can we do that's in a proactive way that helps us to retain our cognitive health? And so this notion of dementia and our brains are going to just wear out, well, what happens to our muscles if we don't use those? And as we get older, how muscle mass that's deteriorating and breaking apart. Well, our brain is it's not a muscle, it's like a muscle. And that if you're exercising your brain and you're doing things in a more proactive, preemptive way, there certainly are things that the science world is telling us today that can make a world of difference. And I'm reading an article today at a Science Focus magazine that's talking about the importance of, even for mental health, getting out into nature and just observing trees, observing the streams of water, and maybe the sounds of birds or the sounds of what's out in the woods. And so why can't we do that? I mean, and even in cities and urban areas, they've got parks. So sit outside and study. They talked about green, the importance of trees and plants and flowers, and just being in nature itself. So why can't we start collectively pulling some of these things together? Social interaction. We keep hearing more and more about the importance of social interaction. And when we feel alone or we feel isolated, we feel like, God, there's nobody, God, I'm the only person in the world, how deadly that is and how it can reduce life expectancy. Needless to say, in that model, as you go through those stages, from stress to anxiety to depression, why am I living? What's my purpose? So as you think about this whole notion of am I doomed for dementia? The answer I come up with was, well, are you on board with some of the things that are detrimental to your health? So diabetes, we keep talking about refined sugars, the amount of sugars that we have in a can of soda. I mean, God, why do they have to put 32 grams of sugar in a can of 12 ounces of soda? I mean, am I reading these labels wrong? Why do we have to have cakes? And, I look at apple pies. I'm a big apple pie person, and I love eating apple pies that have no sugar in them. What I learned years ago picking apples on an orchard was that the apples have enough of sugar, but they won't even freeze when it's freezing outside because of the amount of sugar in them. And so we need to add sugar to buying and baking an apple pie. So I started having apple pies without sugar. Is that something I've taken control over? I've started to look at the amount of sugar in the various things that I'm consuming, be it a piece of cake or a cookie or a drink, and minimizing sugar. So there are things we can do. How about our high blood pressure? What are things we can do for our cardio? And so how about exercising? Are we doing any form of exercise at all? Are we taking walks after dinner? Are we doing something with our muscles and the muscles in our chest and our necks and shoulders and our arms? How about squats for our thighs and calves? What exercising are we doing? Are we just sitting back and watching TV every night without doing anything? How about flexibility, maintaining some flexibility of our necks and our shoulders and our elbows and our knees? How many knee operations are we doing and things? So when I listen to this and I say Americans have this rate of high blood pressure or diabetes, obesity, and unhealthy diets, and a sedentary lifestyle, and then poor mental health, and like, yeah, we kind of self-doom ourselves. And when you go on to these, it says, there's no cure for dementia, but early detection gives patients and caregivers time to plan. Yeah, to plan for dying. But go back to the paragraph in the article. Go back and read. Dementia is expected to surge. Okay, it's going to surge. Okay? Why do we have so many overweight people? What are we doing with nutritional habits? Are we mixing our proteins and our fats and our vitamins that we get from our foods? Are we looking for the easy pill all the time? What are we doing in the evening when we sit down and want to relax after a day? Do we just sit and watch TV and become couch potatoes? So it's possible, though the good news out of the article here, dementia is expected to surge. Yes, it is. It's come out of the Orlando Sentinel, January 16th. It's possible that positive changes in healthier and better treatments for conditions like diabetes and stroke could lower the risk of any age in the future decades, but the dementia cases are continuing to increase. So the first problem is, God, I thought we were talking about dementia on the reduction, and that there were less and less, and therefore, hey, what do we need to worry about? Versus, okay, are there things we can start to do? What do we do to handle our stress in our lives? And we all have them. We're all going to have some level of adversity in our lives. We're going to get bounced around sometimes. Do we have friends and social connections? Do we have people we can go lean on and talk with and say, hey, do you have any ideas how I might handle this problem? Are there things that we can be doing that are more preemptive and proactive? So all I'm saying is, as I read these articles in the January Orlando Sentinel and the January New York Post, reporting on the latest research findings that come out of the science institutes, medical facilities, doom and gloom, there's no help for dementia. Well, when you look at the causes of what they suspect that may be it, there are a lot of things that we can do. And last but not least, the USA Memory Championship, the website has some suggestions on taking an online course, maximizing your memory, or the 6 factors of long-term mental health or cognitive fitness. And each of those have things you can in fact do. So we don't have to be doomed to what being lazy is. We can be more proactive and give it our best shot at things that we are able to do in terms of our diet and our exercise and our social interactions, our sleep habits, how do we handle process stress. There are things that we can do, and we just need to get off our butts. As Coach Patino said to the St. John's team recently, get off your butts and handle adversity and get up and do something that's going to be with you for the rest of, hopefully, a long life. And with this, I get off my soapbox and just encourage each of you to do one thing differently that ties into good mental health that can make a world of difference in your life coming down the road.